Welcome back, Spiralers. If you listened to our last episode, then you know that Gina interviewed me. And it was such a beautiful opportunity for me to talk a little bit about the patterns that I have been spiraling through over the past several years, and to share that I feel so deeply embodied and present now in this moment, the only moment that exists. And I couldn't wait to flip the tables and ask Gina about her life story and her patterns. But something I wanted to share with you all first, because this was really exciting for me to realize, is I have this app, okay? And the app obviously asks you to put in your birth date and birth time, and it will tell you about your bond pattern with you and your friend, or
it's
you
an
and
astrology
your partner.
app.
Yeah, with you and your friend, or you and your partners. And can you guys just guess the word it gave me and Gina? Dude, it says legendary. Legendary. Like, so I've been doing several other patterns before you.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't do yours first, but it's because I was with other people.
Yeah.
And I got a couple good ones, like unique, chill, epic.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's a good one. And then I was like, what's me and Gina's? And then I was like, legendary? Dude, like.
I mean, it literally says it's the strongest
literally
bonds that can exist.
Life-changing, rarest connection.
Yeah.
Life-changing, empowering, amazing, expanding relationship, unique connection, supportive qualities, comfortable communication. I was fascinated when I saw this, but again, this was nothing that we didn't already know.
Yeah, but it's just crazy how accurate it is, because
I
it
know.
also explained like why you seek me, why I seek you, and how we support each other, and it was so dead on. It even said things like Gina might sometimes feel like,
oh yeah, Gina has trouble feeling inferior and learns to feel confidence through you. And then mine was like, Gina helps you feel your feelings. And I was like, yeah. It's like literally a perfect match. And I think this will be such a beautiful conversation, an interview. Such a beautiful interview.
I'm so honored to be on this podcast.
Thank you for being my guest in the Spiraling Higher studio. But you and I have had very different patterns. There's been a lot of similarities just in being human and growing up in small, very homogeneous white towns as Asian girls.
Yeah.
But I really want for our community to know, I mean, not to make it sound bad, but like just how hard this has been for you. And I mean that in the very best way, because I want people who listen to feel so connected to your story and empowered that, oh, you can do shit scared. And actually, kind of the only way you're going to be not scared anymore. I threw you, and I apologize, but also you can thank me later. I really threw you into like the most exposure therapy sort of situation with this podcast. And I would love for you to kind of share what came up for you when we started this journey. And if you want to, you can even rewind a little bit further back with how you felt just in general about being seen before we started. But I think I want them to know just where you were at before and when we started this podcast.
Yeah. I do think it's important for people to know. I think in general, people have always, with all of the jobs I've ever had, have always had this perception of me that I'm this confident person, and that I like to show up, that I like to be the one that's at the front of the room to talk. And pretty much my whole life, I just faked it. I faked it. And I think the hardest thing for me, though, was that sometimes I couldn't fake it because I have these visible things that happen to me when I get really nervous and scared. Like my face turns like bright red. I would like start shaking. I would start like sweating. And it was hard to hide that. And so I got really good at crafting a life where I wouldn't ever need to be in those situations. Or I got really good at crafting scenarios that would feel safer to me. So, you know, for example, people had invited me onto their podcast for like real estate stuff, and I would always say no. But if I did say yes, it'd be like with other people. There was like two other people there, so I could have less eyes on me. So I got very good at kind of dancing around ever being seen. So you and I had talked a lot about starting a podcast because pretty much from the get-go, we just never shut up.
From day one.
Day one. We were like, we should do this, but it was always just like this idea. And, you know, thank God you did the work that you did, because you went on and started posting all these TikTok videos, you jumped into coaching, and, you know, I think seeing you take that leap for me was such evidence of me finally admitting to myself, like, that is really what I want. And it's not like I didn't admit it to myself before, but I think I kept telling myself, I'll do that later. I'll do
Yeah,
that.
you did say that.
Yeah, I'm going to do that later. I'll do that when I'm like more experienced. I'll do that when, you know, I can coach more real estate people, whatever. I had this timeline of, again, I just kept pushing things down the line of I'll deal with that later. And so when you actually were serious about doing this, I mean, I wouldn't say you like threw me into it. I think you were just really good at like coaxing me into it and kind of telling me like it's not what it is. It feels like we were going into like a haunted house, but you're like, this is my place, come over. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, well, actually, you were very, very receptive for the first few weeks to a month. Kind of like, sure, because I kind of presented it like it's not it's not even
Like,
a big
no
deal.
one's gonna listen.
Yeah, like no one's gonna listen.
It's
I'm
just
like,
for us.
let's just like see what happens. Like, let's just like whatever. Worst comes to worst, we'll just store these audios on our computer somewhere.
Totally.
Like, and you were like, sure.
Yep. And then we ordered the mics, we hit record, and then we started releasing episodes. And it was very alarming to my body. You know, I realize in hindsight that I probably should have titrated that a little more, but I also think that needed to happen for multiple reasons. I think I needed to see that I could do it. I think also having you there made things a lot easier because I felt so safe with you. It was like having a security blanket like in the haunted house. So I was like, as long as I got this, like I'll be okay. But, you know, I need everyone to know how much I hated myself through every single episode.
Yeah. Do you know when it listened to any of the episodes?
I mean, I can listen to them more now, I think with a much more neutral ear. I feel like I've healed so much of this fear of being seen. But yeah, the first like 1.5 seasons or 2 seasons even, because we're in season 3. I forgot that. Yeah, I would record and instantly just not be able to re-listen to it. And you know, I had a very hard time receiving positive words from people. And I didn't even want Sam to tell me, like, you did a good job. Or anytime someone would write us a message, you know, I could receive it to some degree, but it almost made me feel worse. It was almost like the more people told me how good it was or how much it helped them, the more that I felt terrible, because I think it just continued to amplify how much I couldn't see myself.
Yeah.
And it was so confusing because it was like, why can't I see this? And I was just on this desperate chase to like love myself. And I remember having that crying phone call with you. I was like, I'm just trying to find love for myself. And you were like, it's already inside. And all of those teachings were so triggering for me because I'm like, it's not there. Like, it's not there. And I am a quadruple Cancer. I have so many feelings and emotions. I'm someone that deeply cares and empathizes for other people in my life, and I really see people. And I think what was so painful for me was, again, not being able to see myself. But then for me, I kind of define that as, well, then there must not be anything good about me, because I can see when there's something good about people. And if I don't see that in me, then that must just mean it doesn't exist. Like, I genuinely told you several times, I'm like, I really just don't think there's anything good about me.
I know, which I thought was absolutely bonkers. But I think that the way you began to understand this belief was by exploring when it started.
100%.
And so I would love for you to tell us kind of like when your fear of being not good, of being unacceptable, just not believing that you could do anything started.
Definitely in childhood. If you've been listening for a while, you will have heard a few of my little anecdotes of my childhood and how I didn't have a lot of happy memories. My family moved every couple of years. I had a very insecure attachment to both of my parents. They were just working all the time. You know, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My parents always had businesses, and you know, they were busy working on the freaking business. They were immigrants. They didn't even speak the language, and I think that was another piece of it, was that me and my parents didn't speak the same language. They spoke Korean, a little bit of English, and then I only spoke English. And so that, I think, also added to this not being seen, because my parents literally couldn't understand so much of what I was saying. But it really started with me as a child really wanting to do all these things like singing and dancing and music. And I was a very expressive, very animated child. And from very early on, it was kind of squeezed out of me. I learned very quickly it's not okay to be like this. If I'm like this, love is not there. If I'm like this, there is some more acceptance there. And I think that's where I learned to mask. And I learned how to hide certain parts of myself from my family and my parents. And so my whole childhood, I mean, it's so opposite from yours because you were so close with your parents, especially like I think when you were in your teen years too, and you talked to your dad a lot. But I really separated from my parents more and more as I got older. And so there was almost like this double life I had. And so I think where it really started was not being able to be seen in the place that you should feel the safest, which is your home, and to the people who should know you the best, which is your parents. And I didn't feel that. And, I really wanted to pursue singing, and I just had so many fears of not being good enough, because I think for me, the narrative was, if I'm going to do this, I have to be the best so that I can show my parents, like, I should be doing this. And then that turned into, working stuff. So I started working at 19 years old. I obviously had jobs before then, but 19 was kind of where I started my career. And I actually didn't go to university. I did go to a trade school. I went to fashion school, like this fashion business program, but I didn't do the traditional route of going to university and getting a degree, which I think a lot of people are very surprised by. But I just knew very early on, like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to spend a shit ton of money on something that I don't want to do. And, I think my mom's narrative of me is that I always make bad decisions in my life, that I'm kind of like this screw up. And so the thing with trauma is that when you are traumatized, especially at a young age, you then start to assume the view of the people who traumatized you. And so I was seeing myself through the lens of my mom constantly. And so that's why it was so hard for me to be seen, because every time I was seen, it was this, it was very equated to pain. Actually, the holistic psychologist, she shared that post that you shared with me. Do you remember that one? And she was basically saying that if you grew up not feeling safe to be yourself,
like basically someone's gaze
yes,
would make you feel rejected, like without even saying anything.
Automatically. Because the thing is with my parents, and more my mom than my dad, because my dad kind of stopped really engaging with us when I was about 9 or 10. But my mom, the only time she noticed me was when I was doing something wrong. The only time she noticed me or acknowledged what I was doing was when it was bad and when I would get in trouble, or she would tell me I was doing it wrong. If I did something well, there was just nothing. It was an absence of any noticing. She didn't get mad, but she didn't say great. And so I think it was this very confusing belief too, because I grew up very intelligent. I got very good grades. I was always in these gifted programs as a child. And I always found it so confusing that everyone around me, my teachers, my friends' parents were like, "You're amazing." And I was like, "What?" But my parents don't think that. So I think that's really where it started, was in childhood, this, in acceptance of who I am. My mom really tried to funnel me into this perfect church Korean kid that I never was, not to the degree that she wanted. And so I started chasing validation.
Yeah.
I started chasing worth. I needed something to show me how good I am. And the only way that I could do that was something that had a metric. And so I loved sales. I loved business. I've always been in businesses with my family. I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. So I do think some element of that is me and just, what I'm here to do. But I loved sales because I could see that I was number one. I could see how well I was doing compared to everybody else. And that's how I could have any semblance of confidence. And what was so hard when we started the podcast was there's no measurement. I can't see. I'm now trusting my own judgment of if I'm doing well or not. And I couldn't trust my own judgment. It was very hard for me. Even editing something was like, I just automatically think it's bad. So how do I know if it actually is good? And I think my biggest fear, I've told you too, is that I'm going to be someone that thinks I'm skilled at something, but I'm really not. I see those people on American Idol.
Oh yeah, that's
always what I say. I'm I don't want to be the person that's on American Idol that thinks I'm
that we're all making fun of.
Yes. And I'm that's me. That's me. And I knew it was a distortion, but there was such an internal block in my body that literally somatically I could not see myself. It just felt so unsafe. And ultimately what that was really leading to and pointing to was, what it would mean if I was seen by someone. What would that mean for me and my body? And that would mean I would have to keep doing it. I would have to keep making them think I'm good. I would have to keep chasing this thing. And so it was easier to never be seen. It was easier to never think I was good at anything because it's so much safer for me to think I just suck at everything. It was just a lot easier to stay in that space.
I'm really glad you framed it that way, because I think when we see our patterns through the lens of how did this make us feel safe or how did this help us cope, we can get underneath it and figure out, okay, what did I really need though? Because you were actually avoiding the thing that you needed because you were like, but if I get it, but then I'll have to keep getting it and I'll have to keep performing. And that's so interesting because a lot of us, like we have this attachment to consistency or something like that, because if we're not consistent, then we won't get the thing that we need because we know that we can't be consistent. We just hide. Like we actually know intuitively, like I'm not going to be able to do that consistently and perfectly forever. So I will just stop. But it's not that you need to be seen perfectly or be consistent all the time. It's that you need to release your attachment to that.
Totally.
So, I mean, take us through. You had this childhood, obviously, which I'm familiar with, but now everyone else is, that really prevented you from being seen, which is so different from me. Like my mom put me on stage and was like, putting me in costumes. And she was like, you're amazing. And I was like, really? Okay. But obviously that filtered your entire experience of becoming an adult, working in sales, trying to earn your worth through being number one and literally clawing your way up there. But, even in saying that we're clawing, like think about that. That's pain. Like you're clawing your way up there, and it indicates that you have to like nail your way to the top, and you have to like stay there and not easily embody that space. It's like if you clawed your way, then you need to fight to stay at the top. So what sort of brought you to the point of I can't keep trying to earn validation? Because like, guys, Gina was like a validation machine. Like
yes, I was.
You really were. Like even when I met you, it was starting to, I mean, we healed so many things once we met, right? But when did you get to that point, and like what was the catalyst for you to be like, I can't fucking keep chasing validation anymore, like this is so painful?
It was definitely when I hit a certain income goal. I thought for sure when I hit this number, then I'll be okay. And that's the thing. It's like when your episode, we were talking about the moving goalpost. That's what it was for me all the time. It's like, okay,
money
hit
goal.
This number. Then I have this many people on the team. Now I have to grow this much. And, I was in real estate for 9 years, and that's probably the worst industry for somebody like me because you're constantly around people who are also chasing validation, chasing, doubling the income and doubling this and that. And so for me, I thought for sure when I hit this number, I will like myself. I'll feel better. And then I didn't. I felt worse because it is a huge, rude awakening when you get the thing that you've been chasing and you feel the same.
Or worse.
Well, then you feel worse. Because you're like, I thought this was going to fix it. And then it was like the belief of, well, then that must really mean it's me. And I must really suck. And I must really not be good at anything. And that journey started very deepening my healing. And that was obviously when you were in my life. And I started to really heal from the hustle. That's when I started to actually ask myself, why do I want to double my business every year? Why do I want to make this much money? Why do I want to have whatever award or accolade? Why is that so important for me? And then it started to like unravel. It was very obvious at first, like I'm trying to get validation, right? I think that's a very like surface level kind of thing. But I started to do a lot of somatic work, a lot of deeper therapy. I've been in therapy for a very long time, but I started to do it with a somatic therapist, which was really helpful. I'll actually never forget when I started breath work, because prior to this, I had not actually done that much breath work. We did it together in Seattle. I think it was a 6-minute one. And I quite liked it because you have to be present with your breath. Like,
yes.
You have to be focusing on your breathing. And I was like, oh, this is really nice. And one of my friends told me about this woman who needed practicum, students or people to practice on for her breathwork exam. And she's like, she's doing them for free. It's an hour session. And I was like, an hour? That's a long ass time to be breathing. And I'd never done anything longer than 6 minutes. And so I was like, I don't know, maybe. And she's like, just do it. It'll be good. And I chose the transformative session. And I did that session. And literally the first thing I said to her when I got out of it was, where did you learn how to do this? I need to know. Because I released so many emotions and I saw so many things, and a lot of things started to become so clear for me. I think that was probably truly the first time that I really saw my inner child. When you experience deep neglect and abandonment from your parents, even though my parents love me, I know this deeply, but the level of abandonment and neglect that my brother and I experienced was a lot more, I don't want to say the worst, but it was a lot more than I was conscious of. And that makes sense because as a child, you have to dissociate from how painful it is to have your
Yeah.
parents constantly reject you. You can't cope with that. And so we have these very wise nervous systems that will go offline for you. It'll say, this is too much, we're going to shut down. And so as you get into adulthood, you don't realize that these patterns are running because you were never in the know that they started in the first place. And so for me, that's really where it started, was recognizing, oh, like I have these patterns, I have these survival strategies, and I can see why now. Having my daughter was a huge catalyst to a lot of this because I could see so clearly in her what would happen if I were to reject her the way that I was rejected. I could viscerally see her light just being snuffed out if I were to do that. And then it was so reflective in mine. And, being her mom has been such a gift for me, but it's equally been so painful because I can see the part of myself that really just needed someone to see me the way that I see her. And then I just realized in that moment, like, I get to be the one that does that. I get to be the one that sees myself. I get to be the one that lifts me up and acknowledges me. And, when you have that realization, it doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. And so I was just so committed in that moment of, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm going to fall in love with myself. I'm going to know myself, and I'm going to support myself in a way to express myself unapologetically and love that. And I started the breathwork journey. I became trained in the trauma-informed breathwork, and then that led me to somatic work, which is, breathwork is a somatic tool, but somatics is all about the body. And so much of the work prior to that, much like you, was in my head.
Yeah.
It was like reading all the books, listening to the podcasts, going to therapy and talking about it, talking to you about it, but digging deep into my body and to feel things that I could never feel before. Like you, it was like I never really felt like when I was hungry. I also didn't think I needed sleep. I would work through migraines all the time. I was so disassociated from the pain. And really, it was because I was so addicted to adrenaline.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you are in a trauma response consistently for decades, these survival strategies just become your way of life. And to start breaking up with them is very scary because it's literally holding on to like a life raft and somebody being like, we're going to take this away. But you're like, but this is how I've survived this whole time. So you can't believe that you'll still be able to swim and float without this life raft.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was kind of what started it. It's very Cancerian of me to start crying.
I thought it was beautiful. I was like, I knew she was going to cry during this.
I was trying really hard. It would have come up earlier, but it came out then.
And I'm really glad you did, and that you shared that you get to be there for yourself, because I think you did this too, but a lot of people say, like, who would I have been if like these traumatizing things didn't happen to me? Like, I'd be so much further along, or like I wouldn't be so fucked up, or things would be better if like I had gotten this.
Yep.
And of course, in that vein, you're outsourcing all of your power. It's like, now I have to go back in time with a little time travel machine to change the events. But it's not that we have to do that. We have to learn how to relate to the part of us that didn't get what it needed.
Yeah.
And you always have that power. And so, yeah, I guess I'm a little bit curious about how you began to reacquaint yourself with that child within you.
Yeah, I think life will then start to reflect to you opportunities to show up for yourself. And you use the term brick by brick in your story, and that was very much mine too. It was the thing is, when you get trained in somatic coaching, it's like every session you're in class, like you got to go deep, you know? And it was basically a year, maybe even longer than a year, 14 months of pretty much multiple times a week, me deeply going into a body meditation and releasing what was there. I think the first layer was first seeing it. I think one of the most painful parts of the healing journey is admitting how much pain there is.
Yes.
It's looking square at it in the eye and seeing yourself and being like, that fucking hurts. And as Asian children, it's very hard for us to admit that because we don't want to negate how much our parents did for us. And I didn't want to admit how much pain I was in because my mom does love me. And I'm like, it's fine. It's okay.
she takes care of me.
Yeah. And I'm a mom. And I know that moms are not perfect and it's okay. But, you know, that is another pattern online, which is self-dismissing. And so the self-dismissing pattern is probably one of my biggest themes of that I spiral through because I dismiss myself before anyone else can. And it's this self-rejection that consistently happens. And that's actually what hurts more than the fear of being seen.
Yeah.
The fear of being seen is not being afraid of being seen by other people. It's the pain that you feel that you're not seeing yourself. And once I started to really understand that, I could kind of slowly titrate my way into starting to see myself. So again, through my somatic journey, getting trained, I was able to heal a lot of what was inside of my body. And then it was able to be practice through experimentation with you. You know, even with the podcast, there was a few episodes where I was like, okay, I'm going to listen and I'm really going to try to listen as a listener, not as me, not as a judge. Let me just listen. And there were some times where I could listen and be like, I actually like that. That was pretty good. But then there was also days where I was like, I freaking suck and I should leave. And so it was a lot of iterations of that. And it was also just letting myself try. I think that was probably one of my mantras, was just let myself try. And was also becoming very willing and very comfortable with quote unquote failing. And so for me, it was embodying this newbie energy of, I'm just going to learn. I'm just going to try. And every podcast that I'm on, I'm going to just keep on showing up as myself. And that's the only version of success that it matters to me. It was, a pretty big component of the healing journey for me was redefining success, which we've talked about a lot on the episodes. And so I really embodied that. You know, I decided this is what success is from now on. And that's what I stuck to. And I think over time, I was able to build a relationship with myself. It's very much like any relationship with anybody.
Yeah,
you know, you
is.
and I, we have deepened our connection and level of trust through our contrast, through the difficult conversations, through the way that I've showed up for you, the way that you've showed up for me. So every time I would feel like I wasn't good enough, every time I hated my voice and what I wrote and what I said, I took that as an opportunity to be there for myself and become the inner parent that I always needed. And ultimately, I mean, the hack for me was I'm just going to treat myself the way I treat my daughter. And that became a very easy way for me to gauge how I knew if I was acting from love or from my wound. And I think that was another thing, was really deciding I'm going to choose to see myself through the eyes of love and not through the eyes of my wound. Because when you're on this journey, you can get very attached to your story. And so what I started to recognize too was I kept on talking about, oh, I'm someone that has a fear of being seen. And oh, I'm someone that can never do that. And oh, I'm someone that sucks at things like this. And one day I was like, that's not my story anymore.
Yeah. I remember being like, you have to stop saying that.
Yeah.
And you were like, I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I just kept reinforcing that story. And it's, I don't know, this is a silly analogy, but it's kind of like if you were a bad dancer and then you ended up training for like 2 years to still say that you're a bad dancer. It's crazy because you've obviously practiced.
It's so habituated. Like,
yeah,
that's so funny. People are so, because even me, like I've like run half marathons and I'm like, I'm such a bad runner. Like it's so automatic.
Yes.
It's like, it's really hard to see yourself, as evolved, which you are.
Yeah.
Right? That's so interesting.
But you can't see the evolution because you're in it. Right? It's a lot like weight loss, I think. A lot of people lose weight, but they can't see it. It's like literally body dysmorphia. Like I had self-dysmorphia. Like I could not see.
All of us do.
Yes, true. We all do. And so, I think as I started to really see myself, so many other things healed because all the jealousy I would feel and the comparison comparison was another huge wound of mine because of how much my mom compared me to other people. But the comparison, what that was really masking was what I believed would make me more loved, right? I guess that's what everybody does comparison for. But for my mom, she really wanted me to be a certain way, a certain version of me that she deemed as the best type of person. And so I was always chasing this, like, let me prove to you that I am good and that, I can do it. But in doing that, I just continued to make myself feel worse and worse. And so anyways, once I made that commitment to myself, it really was like, I have these 10 commandments for myself. You and I have these twin commandments. It's setting up these commitments to yourself, just like you would at a fucking wedding, right? Like I vow to XYZ. And one of the first ones was I vow to not work when I'm sick. And that was a huge one for me, to not push myself and use myself as a product. I that was one of the first ways I built trust with myself was, oh, wow, like I'm sick and I'm actually letting myself rest. Oh, wow, I'm noticing I need to eat and I'm responding to that. It was literally just these taking care of myself actions. And then it was another brick layer of how I can actually give myself words of affirmation. And it started with a mantra of, I saw that. I would do something and I would say to myself, oh, I saw that. I saw the way you did that. I saw the way that you were super terrified and you showed up. I love that. And I started to notice these things the way that I would notice them in my daughter. And I did start to really fall in love with myself. And it's so incredible because truly one of the things that you and I always say is that your pain becomes your purpose. And it's so interesting how many clients I now help through the exact same thing. And that's why I was so passionate to have even an all Asian container for my last coaching program and even the one that is coming up now, because I just feel like so many of us Asian women were raised to hide. We were taught to shrink. We were taught that we were too much. And so many of us are struggling with this fear of being seen and fear of being ourselves. But, if you were to have the right space and the right sacred safety to be able to practice what that feels like I wish I had that. I mean, I ultimately did have it with you. I think you were that safe container for me because I think for the first time, I was able to fully be myself. And I felt so like me when I was with you. And even on the podcast, I couldn't be anyone other than me on here because it was with you. And we were
I didn't
just
want
talking.
anybody. I didn't want anybody else.
Totally. And I was genuinely just myself. And I could see that was valuable. And I was so honest about my story and about how much I struggled. And I got so many messages from people like, oh my God, like I struggle with that too. And I started to see the evidence of how vulnerability creates connection and how it opens the door for other people to express the same thing. And that's when I realized that there's a reason why I went through this. I think a lot of our clients say, like, who am I to do this? Who am I to write a book? Who am I to have a podcast? Who am I to become a coach? Who am I to post about this? And it's like, who are you to say no to that? Mm-hmm. Who? And I had to ask myself that. I kept saying, no, I can't. Who am I to be a coach? Who am I to help people? And I had to say to myself, who am I to perpetuate a generational cycle of shrinking myself? And so my why became, I'm doing this to continue to unlock the doors for other people who are also shutting the door on themselves. If I keep dismissing myself, I'm saying to the universe, other people should too. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to, one of the things that really catapulted me at first was being able to do this for other people, including my daughter. I was like, I am not going to live my life with my daughter watching me where she's going to consistently watch me perpetuating a pattern of shrinking myself. Like, no. I was like, I refuse. I'm not going to live in that world with her. And again, when I started to see other women and other people also healing through these patterns, through these story shares, I was like, okay, like I'm going to keep talking about it and I'm going to keep doing this work. And so I was so committed to even just proving to myself, not in like an egoic way, but I just wanted to show myself that I can live a life where I deeply see and love and accept myself unconditionally. And now that I've experienced that, oh man, you can't go back. It's so obvious now when you start to have that inner critic online. Like it's so stark.
Yeah. I really feel like we have the secret to life.
100%.
And that's why we love teaching it so much, because there's just no other way to really move through life, that unless you want to go through it with pain.
Or not feeling anything at all.
Yep.
You could do that. I think that's what's so funny about you and I, though. You kind of move through life really not feeling anything. At least like the pain. And I think I moved through life feeling so much of it. And that's actually what kind of kept me away from doing things that I wanted to do. So we had very different patterns, as you said. But yeah, that's interesting. But I think for me, at the end of the day, one of the things that I teach my clients so emphatically is you really are being in partnership with yourself. It's about getting to know yourself so deeply that you know what you need. And in the beginning, you're not going to know. All of my clients are like, I don't know what my unmet need is. Like, I don't know what I feel in my body. And that's normal. You don't know yet. That's the point. It's about getting to know, right? It's like when you first meet someone, honestly, even your baby, you kind of assume that once the baby pops out, you're going to feel this like instant connection, but you're like, you're a literal stranger. Like, I've never met you
I don't know what you
before.
need.
Yeah, I don't know what you need. And you spend so much time and care getting to know, what does the baby need? What does it like? How does it like to be soothed? So it's very much the same thing. You're almost giving birth to yourself, and you start to become in partnership with you, being in partnership with your trauma, your nervous system, your body, your brain. Like, even me understanding how my brain works was so integral in me learning how to support myself. And so this is just why I love the work that we do, because we get to help people guide themselves through becoming their own best partner. You know, when it comes to business, one of the things that I love teaching is that, you know, most people get into entrepreneurship to work for themselves. But the thing that they don't realize is that you're actually filling two roles in the business, because you are the CEO, right? The visionary. You're like the leader, but you're also the employee. You're the one doing the work. And so when you are in entrepreneurship, you are filling these two roles, and it requires you as the CEO to get to know the employee. How do they need to be motivated?
Yes.
How can I give them rest? What do they need when they feel down? And as the employee, you have to be vocal about what your needs are to the CEO. And I think that was one of the biggest changes in my business, and something that's been so helpful for my clients, is to understand that there are two roles, and that you are in partnership with yourself. And it really is personifying this part of you that can take care of you. And so I think it really goes back to being your own inner parent.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, loving yourself really is just taking care of yourself.
That's it.
Just like it is for your kid.
That's literally it. And that's the thing with overcoming fear. I think, you know, a lot of people have asked me, how did you overcome the fear? And the quickest way I can say it is, you overcome fear by going through it. You do it in the way that feels the safest for you. You know, I think I definitely had narratives from people being like, just jump, just do it, just go, and just quit real estate and just jump into it. And I knew for me that was not the way to go. And some people can. I mean, you certainly did. Some people can. But I think for me, it was also trusting my pace and saying, no, like, not yet. And that was one of the first markers of me taking care of myself. And so I was able to, really take my time, trust my pace. And over time, I learned how to really be the kind of partner that I needed to be. And I hope that for anyone, whether or not you actually are an entrepreneur or not, even if you are a creative and maybe you like to write, maybe you like to post content, whatever it is, you know, ask yourself, what kind of partner am I being? Like, would I want to work with me? And I think for most entrepreneurs are like, I would quit on this person. Like, you literally become the boss that you left.
Yeah. You become your own slave.
Totally. Like, I had some clients that were like, not even letting themselves go to the bathroom because they were like, I got to keep working. I got to keep going till it's done. And when they start to ask themselves, like, what would you do if you worked for somebody who said, don't go to the bathroom? And they're like, oh shit. I would quit. Yeah. Like, I would probably call like the freaking whatever board of ethics.
Yeah, I'm going to HR.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like, that's so inhumane. And I think that's what we start to really see, is how inhumane we are to ourselves, how self-abusive we are to ourselves. I think that's another awakening piece, is just becoming aware of how much you reject yourself. And so piece by piece, I still notice these patterns inside of me. But the way that I'm able to, again, overcome any of them is really just going through them. And, you know, my healing journey has been less intellectual and much more somatic. I'm somebody that feels things way before I think things. And so I think, you know, my journey of healing really did need to go through the somatic route. And that's the thing. You get to learn that about yourself. You get to figure out, like, what kind of support do you need? What kind of support is going to be best for you? And you get to just take yourself on a journey of figuring it out together. And really, like, learning how to take care of you. And it's very indicative in our relationship too. It's like, it's not like I now know how to take care of Sam and that's it, right? It's ever evolving. You're growing, you're changing. And so I love learning about what your needs are and how I can be supportive to you. And it gets to be this very loving experience within yourself too. Like, sometimes people are like, oh my God, that sounds like so much work. But it's like, what else would you want to spend your energy and time on? Because as you said in your episode, taking care of yourself is taking care of everything else.
It's literally, you are everything.
Yes.
Like everything you're experiencing in your life is a reflection of what's going on with you.
Yeah.
So to take care of you is to take care of your life.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. But people are trying to take care of their life and not them. So they separate life from them. It's like, you are the life. Like everything that's happening in your life is a reflection and a co-creation with you.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think that both of our journeys have really reflected that there is no one we take better care of now than ourselves.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
And it makes it a lot easier to take care of each other and other people.
Well, frankly, I don't think you can take care of other people.
You think you can. Yeah. And I think that was the other thing too, you know, in my coaching journey of like getting trained and all of that, it was realizing how important it was for me to be regulated so that I could support my clients and be that regulated system for them. And it was also bleeding into my life as a mom. I was like, oh, in order for me to be the kind of mom I want to be, like I do need to take care of me and be regulated so that I can better support my daughter. And so yeah, I think a lot of people have a narrative of it's selfish to keep taking care of yourself, but I truly think that it's the most selfless thing you can do for yourself, for everyone around you, and literally the world. So I hope that what you take away from my very lengthy amount of talking, I feel like I just talked the entire time. I hope that what you learn from this is that it's okay wherever you're at, and that if you do feel fearful, that is not a forever thing, that it's absolutely something that you can shift and transform and transcend. And, you know, I need to say the reason why I called my group program Metamorphosis is because I actually just started researching butterflies. It was very random. And the way that a caterpillar metamorphs into a butterfly is it goes into the little chrysalis and it literally breaks down. Like the body dies.
It becomes goop.
It becomes goop. And from the death of the caterpillar creates the enzymes to create the butterfly. And that's when I saw like, oh, like it's the parts of me that need to die so that the true parts of me, the real me, gets to live. And I can only flourish in my life and be who I am to the degree that I let go of who I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's why I called it Metamorphosis. And it was such a testament to like my own journey of me really releasing and letting go of who I thought I was. Like the story of I'm not good at this and I'm bad at this. It was letting those parts die so that I could come to life.
That was really beautiful.
That's it.
I like in my head, like see little butterfly wings just like emerging from your back.
Totally. And actually to piggyback even off of that, another thing I learned about butterflies is that when they first come out of the chrysalis, they don't start flying right away because their wings are wet. And so even though they come out of the cocoon or the chrysalis, they have to sit there and wait. And I was like, oh my God, like my wings are just drying right now. Like that's okay. Like my wings can have time to dry because to try to fly with them wet would damage the wings. And so it also spoke to me of my journey and releasing this concept of how quickly I need to get this thing done and really allowed myself to be like, I'll wait for them to dry. And when they're dry, I'll fly.
Wait, that's really similar to my favorite little flying fact, which is about bumblebees.
Oh.
Which is apparently that like aerodynamically, the weight of the bee and the design of the wing makes it like quote unquote impossible for them to fly.
Oh.
But it's like the bee does not know this and flies anyways.
Oh my God, I love that.
It's like, imagine if the bee thought like, oh, I'm too heavy for these wings.
Right. This is not physically possible.
Yeah, possible for me. But it's like, it doesn't know that. So it just like flies around anyways. But that's why the bee has to take a lot of breaks. Like, but notice how bees like fly for a little bit and then they have to like stop.
Yeah. But imagine if the bee had been told from day one that you're not going to be able to do this. Like it would never even try.
Yeah, there's a quote about that too, where it's like something about how like a chick that like a hawk that believes it's a chick never gets off the ground.
Yes,
something
I've
like
seen
that.
Yeah. But you can all fly. You all have wings.
It's all within you. It's all within you.
Yes.
And that's so funny. Those little flying facts are so beautiful.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for sharing about what you spiraled through. That was so beautiful.
Did you learn anything? Probably not.
I know a lot about you. Did you learn anything from mine?
Not anything new.
But I think ultimately this was for our listeners to hear that behind the quote unquote curtain, a lot of inner work goes on. And I am so endlessly proud of you and me both for never shying away from the work. We're doing it all the time. It's like moment to moment, day by day, pattern by pattern, whatever comes up.
Yeah.
We just deal with it on the spot. And what we used to reject with so much shame and guilt, we just embrace now with so much love and acceptance.
And it's so much easier when you're around people who are also doing it.
Yeah.
Truly, because I think it normalizes the journey. Because otherwise, if you're the only one doing it, which I know there's a lot of you out there that are the only one doing it in your life, it's really lonely and you're kind of like, why the fuck am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
It's really easy to give up because it's just so much easier to stay in kind of under the veil of the way that you used to operate. But yeah, honestly, seeing you in your journey and seeing your expansion, and also like it's twofold for me. It's you setting an example of what it looks like to do the work and being evidence of the work working, but also the safe space you've created for me. I think truly, I do not know, like I cried so hard on my 40th birthday because I met Sam right before my 35th birthday. And so at the halfway point of my 30s is when my life changed. And what really changed me was this huge permission slip to be able to be myself and to know that, wait, you love all of this? And so I just have to say thank you to you for letting me be me.
Aww.
I love you.
I love you so much. No, I cried on Gina's birthday too. I started leaving this voice note, which was so funny. I was like, "What's up? It's your birthday. Woohoo, 40." And then I started like going into everything you mean to me. And I was like, "Oh my, I'm like crying right now. Whoa, oh, holy shit." I was like, I'm like fucking sobbing. Because I think that it's just so simply could not be me without you.
And now
we're legendary.
We're legendary.
We're
Our
legendary.
friendship is legendary. All right. Well, we hope to see all of you in the community.
Yes.
We have some very exciting things coming out over the next couple of months. We actually spilled the beans on our last call. So if you want to know what the beans are, come to our next call and we'll see you on the next one.
See you there. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this honest conversation. We hope it brought you peace, clarity, and a little bit further along your spiritual journey.
If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to us if you left us a 5-star rating and a review so we can bring you more conscious conversations, spiritual topics, and guests.
And we lovingly invite you to join our free Spiraling Higher community by clicking the link in the show notes to continue this healing dialogue and share with us how this episode impacted you.
Come on in, introduce yourself, and meet your conscious besties in a safe space for healing conversations between us and other like-minded people on their healing journey.
Here's to Spiraling Higher.